Hello my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to our entitled people, where people believe it's all about them and no one else matters. And in today's episode, Karens are getting arrested left and right, guys, doing the dumbest things ever. And one security guard shares a tale of the worst encounter they've ever had. Guys, I hope you enjoy the stories today. Hit subscribe if you're not subscribed, and as always, you can send or link your posts to this email right here. Let's dive in. When I was working my first job in a thrift store, someone had donated, no lying here, 75 brand new $300 price tag still attached football jerseys to us. I have no clue why or how, but I was lucky enough to find them and tag them. So I put the prices at $75 each, and all 75 went on a rack close to the registers. Now, by the registers, we have very high-definition cameras, mostly to watch the employees to make sure they weren't mishandling money, as we've had a few instances in the past, but other times, it's to stop shoplifters. We had one camera facing the front of the store, which is where the story begins. Again, we had 75 jerseys hanging on the front rack right by the camera in front of the store. In walks a thin lady, the Karen of the story. The thin Karen notices the rack and she takes about 10 off the rack. She then goes into the dressing room and then stuffs her shirt with all 10 and walks out. The woman comes back the next day and she did the same thing. By this time, we noticed the missing jerseys and we checked the cameras. We see her walking into the dressing room and coming out looking 9 months pregnant and leaving the store. At this point, we print out her pictures and we place them at all 3 registers and at the front door. In walks the lady again a few days later. The jerseys were now moved to a glass showcase where only employees could get into. As she was looking, she looked up and she noticed her picture was posted on all 3 registers and she lost it on us. She then had the nerve to ask why her picture was there, that she didn't consent to it, to which our head manager was called. The head manager explains that she was caught shoplifting those jerseys, and if she didn't get out right now, she'd call the police. The Karen was stunned and she asked to see a close-up of the picture. My manager obliged and shows her how she walked in very thin and walked out looking really pregnant. And her response was that she took some nachos in the dressing room while she was trying on the jerseys, and it must have made her look bloated. As you can imagine, things didn't end there. To cut a long story short, the woman throws a fit, demanding her pictures be taken off the wall of shame, and that her family shops here as well, and she doesn't want them seeing her plastered all over the store. The police end up being called, and not only was she arrested for theft and charged, she was permanently banned from the store, and her picture stayed up on the banned wall for months after that. You know, they say thieves are stupid, guys, but this is way beyond that in my opinion. Like, coming back not once, but 3 times to steal more of what you've been stealing is already dumb enough, but the audacity of someone to then complain to the manager about her picture being plastered on the walls as a thief is ridiculous. And the funny thing is she didn't want her family to know she's a thief, but after the arrest and possible charges and her picture staying up for months after that, some people literally dig their own grave. And this next person shares their little story of a psycho lettuce Karen, guys. Listen to this. So I work as a shift manager in a grocery store. In our store, people need to bring produce to the register, where we'll weigh it and price it for them, or just scan the item when it's individually priced. One of these items is lettuce, which comes in opaque bags with an open top. The day this happened, a middle-aged Karen, who we'll call Lettuce Lady, loads up all of her groceries on the belt, and I start to scan. When I reach for the lettuce, I feel something strange. It turns out Lettuce Lady had stacked 3 lettuces inside this bag. When I confront her, she said she just grabbed the bag from the shelf, so I call the produce clerk. The conversation went something like this. I say to the produce clerk, "Hey, so this lady said she found a bag with 3 lettuces stuffed inside. Isn't that strange?" The produce clerk says, "Yes it is, as lettuces are only sold individually. At this point, Lettuce Lady starts to turn red. She then says, "I want to speak to your manager immediately." So I proudly introduce myself as the manager to Karen, which made matters even worse because she starts throwing a tantrum a 3-year-old would be jealous of. The tantrum starts with her tearing off the bag with her teeth and throwing lettuces to the floor, and then stomping them with her feet. I tell her to calm down, which only works as fuel on her already raging fire. She then starts to throw things from the belt into the store and knocking down display shelves. This is the point where I call in security and told the produce clerk to phone the police. This makes her even more angry. So when security arrives, she spits all over the security guard and my register. And then she tries to punch both me and the guard in the face. The security guard eventually manages to tackle Karen and keep her immobile until police arrive. She was then arrested. When she was dragged out of the store, she starts to scream things about horrible customer service all over the place. She ends up in the back of a police car because 1, she was too cheap to pay the extra 75 cents for the lettuces, which were on sale anyways, and 2, she was way too stubborn and self-proud to admit that she tried to steal one of the cheapest items in our store, like any sane adult would do. Ain't that something? And seriously, some people's logic is baffling, I tell you. Like, too cheap to pay the extra $1 or something for the lettuce, and she ends up getting arrested, probably charged for destruction of property, probably now has to pay for a lawyer and who knows what else. Like, I'm not condoning thievery because thieves are crappy people, but how hard was it for that Karen to be like, "Oh, that's weird. Well, please ring up all 3, please." So I work as an assistant manager at a large crafts retailer. One day, I'm on the register helping out with busy lines when I got an older couple. I ring everything up and she pays in cash. After I give the wife the change, she then asks if she could get change for $2 in quarters. I say alright and then take the $2 and give her 8 quarters. I thought everything was perfect until the husband chimes in and he says, "Are you effing serious? You need to give my wife the correct change. She gave you $2. I respond, "I did give her the correct change, sir." He then says, "No, you didn't. I was standing here the whole time. You need to learn how to count money correctly." I respond, "I took 2 $1 bills from her and gave her..." He then interrupts me right there and he screams, "Don't you explain your mistake to me. Give my wife the correct change so we can leave." The husband then proceeds to leave the store while I'm standing there with his wife. She gives me a sympathetic look, like she knows I was right. She says, "I'm sorry about that. I'll just be taking my things and be leaving. Now, thank you." The woman then leaves the store and she meets her husband outside. I'm just watching through the doors as her husband approaches her, probably asking if I gave her the right change. All of a sudden, the guy starts shaking angrily and he stomps back into the store. I'm standing there thinking, holy crap, what the heck is this guy's problem? The man stomps right in front of me and he gives me a dirty look. And he screams, "I want to talk to the highest manager here right now." So of course, I call the store manager and he meets the guy up front. The guy screams at him and says, "This idiot needs to learn how to count change correctly. My wife gave him $2 and this idiot gave her 8 quarters. The manager explains to him, "But 8 quarters is $2, sir. But we can check the cameras above the register to make sure everything was done correctly if you'd like." The guy then says, "You are both stupid beyond compare. I'm calling the police." He then proceeds to take out his phone and calls, accusing the store of stealing from hard-working customers. The police end up coming not too soon after that, and they ask what's going on. We state everything that happened and even offer to show them the cameras. The police then say there's no need, and then ask if they want us to escort the man off the property. The store manager says yes because he's banning the man from the store. I still have no idea why that guy thought 8 quarters wasn't $2. Yeah, it's either that guy couldn't math and he just doubled down on his mistake, or he's got something else going on because that encounter was ridiculous, guys. And a lot of people are suggesting dementia. That said, I only wish OP asked the guy straight up how much change he thinks his wife should have gotten. Like, it bothers me that I don't know what he thinks change for $2 is. So I work at a small gas station that's connected to a mechanic's lot. We're the first gas station you see going from upstate, the dense woods, down to the bigger city, so we're always pretty busy. Now, we've had our fair share of crazy customers, but this one woman lived a short walk up the street from the station, and she always came by asking for $1 worth of gas. It would either be for her huge gas-guzzling truck or a small gas tank that she would walk over to us. The woman's done a lot of crazy things to get on our nerves, but this one was the one that wins it all. The day this happened, she came up to me and she said, "Hey, give me $1 in the tank." As I'm filling up her small gas tank, I notice that the woman's rummaging through her backpack cussing, and I'm thinking, here we go. The woman then says, "Oh, I forgot my wallet at home, so when you're done, I'm going to go back and get it." I say to her, "Okay, you can go back home quick. I'll keep the gas tank in the shop for when you get back." She then says, "Let me just save myself the trip and take it with me." And you can probably see where this is going. I say, "Hey, you know I can't let you do that." The woman literally screams like a 6-year-old and she says, "Fine, whatever, I'll be right back." So I wait about 3 hours and then take my hour lunch break. Usually, I lock myself in the break room area we have, and when I return, she's sitting at the counter arguing with my coworker, how she won't give her money to him and it must be me. She sees me and screams, "There you are, here." She then holds out her cupped hands, and I kid you not, it was 100 pennies. So I hold my hands out to take her payment, and that's when she pulls her hand back and she drops all the pennies on the floor in front of me and my coworker. And with a disgusting smirk on her face, she goes, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Give me my gas now." Me, being pissed at this point, say, "I don't know what gas you're talking about, so get out of the shop. And honestly, I wouldn't come back because we're not going to do business with you anymore." Again, like a child, she says, "Give me my gas. I paid you." I then say, "Well, your payment's on the floor and not in our register, so you didn't pay for any gas. Get out." As the woman's picking up the pennies, my coworker's watching over her inside the shop, while she's cursing, yelling, all that such. As she finishes scraping up the pennies, I go inside after helping someone else at a pump. I go to the register, and that's when she screams, "Here's your money, a-hole." She then threw the double fistful of pennies at me, and she continued on with death threats. We had to call the police to remove her from the station. The woman was arrested, and I haven't seen her ever again. So this happened the other day, and it's the most insane thing I've ever been a part of. So my store had a sale on hand soap. If you buy one, you get one, and a couple of thousand points on top of it. It's not a bad deal, and the points can be saved for later. Well, good sales usually bring the worst types of customers into the store. You know the kind, the coupon-crazed, middle-aged woman who firmly believes that their expired 60-cent off coupon is worth more than the jobs of whatever poor retail slave gets stuck ringing them up. That said, our website does this cool thing where it tells you what store is closest to you and how much stock it has of whatever product you're looking for. It updates its numbers every night. Unfortunately, we sold all 8 cases of that particular soap within the first hour we're open. Apparently, our sale coincided with the coupon for $1 off of 2. Since our website hadn't updated yet, we had couponers coming in all day demanding hand soap or they would call corporate. So we're 10 minutes from close, praying that no one else comes in looking for that darn soap. And that's when a woman walks in. You know the type. Yoga pants, motivational saying emblazoned across her chest in rhinestones, one of those binders filled with coupons, and the "let me speak to your manager" haircut. The woman zooms back to the soap aisle where she was met with an empty shelf and signs that we put up saying that we were out of stock. She then came to the register and she demanded a manager. I informed her that I was the closing manager and that I would help her if I could. She'll be referred to as Karen for obvious reasons. The Karen says to me, "Excuse me, but your website says you have 96 of this soap. Your shelf is empty, so I need you to go to the back and grab the rest for me. I want all 96 of them." I respond, "I'm sorry ma'am, but we've been out of them since this morning. If you had come in earlier..." She then interrupts and says, "Earlier? How could I come in early? I had to clip 96 effing coupons for the soap because your website said you had it." It's at this point I say, "Ma'am, please don't raise your voice at me. We'll get a new shipment later in the week. The sale will still be running then if you want to come back." And she screams, "No." She then slams her coupon binder on the counter and she says, "You will go get me my soap. It says you have 96 soaps and I know you have some. You're keeping it for your staff." I again say, "Ma'am, I asked you to not raise your voice at me. It's now past closing time, so I'm gonna have to ask you to leave. If you want, you can call the store tomorrow to talk to the store manager. He might be able to help you better." Cue the full blowout. She says, "You best be getting him on the phone right now. You ain't a real manager and I ain't leaving until I get some help. I cut coupons all effing day, and your website said you had 96. So I'm not leaving until I have 96 soaps." At this point, she was slamming her binder into the counter with each word she spoke, because that's how reasonable people communicate, I guess. I then say, "If you won't leave, I'll have to call the police. I'll ask you once more to leave and call back at a time where we can resolve this to your satisfaction." At that, Karen says, "F you. I'll sit down right here and I ain't going nowhere until I have 96 effing soaps in a bag." She then yanks open her binder and she starts throwing the previously mentioned soap coupons all onto the counter. I called the police and she was still in the middle of her adult tantrum when an officer comes in. As we went through the standard what seems to be the problem, more police cars show up. His little radio thing on his hip starts squawking. After he answered, his whole demeanor changed. He then asked her to come with him outside to answer some questions about the car she was driving. As soon as she heard that, she turns and she bolted, but she didn't get far before he caught her. My cashier and I watched as he led her to the police car outside. 5 other police cars were parked in a semicircle around the truck she had driven, and several other officers were asking her male companion to step out of the vehicle. My cashier and I watched from the window as they tried for 20 minutes to get the guy to leave the truck. They had guns pointed and everything. I heard from the store manager later that the car she was driving was stolen, and the guy she was with was her dealer, and the guy had drugs on him. Apparently, she was gonna pay him in soap or something. I don't know how that works. It was a roller coaster of a night. Again, some people are lacking brain cells, I tell you. Like, common sense. If you're in a stolen truck and you had some shady people with you, like, the last thing you'd want to do is draw any sort of attention to yourself. And reading this post, I'm super curious, guys. Like, who knows what that lady's endgame was? Maybe she wanted the 96 soaps for herself. Maybe the soap was somehow used in the process of making some sort of drugs. Or maybe it was a scheme where she'd return the soaps and get money. I have no idea. This person comments, "Things like this can be used as currency, but normally that's only for expensive products like laundry soap, not hand soap. Maybe they got them mixed up and they thought all soap was easily tradable." Listen, I had no idea any soap could be used for anything like that. But yeah, guys, let me know your thoughts on this post. So with the retail holiday from hell approaching, I wanted to tell a tale of the worst Black Friday I've ever gone through. Hopefully this puts a little perspective on how much worse things could be for you. So this took place in the good old year of 2007. The iPhone was unveiled. The last Harry Potter book was released in stores. Oh, and there was some sort of mortgage crisis, but, you know, mostly a good year. I was working at a major retailer as a loss prevention agent, mostly standing at the front of the store, watching cameras, checking receipts, all that fun stuff. It's not the best loss prevention job I had, but far from the worst. It was late October when my manager pulls me into the back office. The store manager was concerned. Corporate was being flooded with calls from people complaining about fraudulent credit card purchases, and he needed me to investigate. I would get additional hours to work in the office, and he needs it done as soon as possible. Holidays were coming up, sales to be made, yada yada yada. Well, I wasn't too happy about the extra hours, but I like a challenge, so I start looking at the complaints and the transactions associated with them. Turns out, the complaints were all the same. You see, a few months previous, around July, the company was pushing magazine subscriptions at the register. You would come up with your gold-plated $200 HDMI cables, and during checkout, you'd receive an offer for 3 months of a magazine or magazines of your choice. The store was pushing these hard. At the end of every pay period, the associate with the most sign-ups would get a $25 gift card to the store. If the same associate won 3 weeks in a row, they would earn a pizza party. Of course, being a crappy retail environment, it wasn't enough that they pushed the magazine. They had to sell the subscriptions, as it was vital to the future of the company. Any good loyal employee would be able to sell these easily. And oh yeah, if you don't sell enough, your hours would get docked. After all, the holidays were coming up, which meant many new hires. If you were getting docked hours, there was a good chance that one of the newer associates would take your position come January, and you would be screwed out of a job. Of course, none of this was ever said out loud, but we all knew the game. Well, each and every one of these fraudulent charges revolved around magazine subscriptions. People saying they said no, and then they were charged 3 months later for magazines, even though they never received anything. And the biggest issue was as the months went by, more and more people had complaints. Through some long investigating, we noticed several key things. Number 1. One associate was responsible for the first month. She was the weekly winner and she won 3 pizza parties in a row. Eventually, every other front-end associate started doing it as well. One week, they would have 10 subs, and the next, they would have 50 to 60 each. The front-end managers were ecstatic. They were the #1 store in the country for subs. Our store was killing it. How could this be a bad thing? Well, as you've probably all guessed, the first golden associate was signing people up for magazines without their permission to inflate her numbers. Eventually, she let some people in on what she was doing, and they all started doing it as well. Even the new hires for the holidays started doing it. We started watching the front end with cameras, and we caught several employees on camera doing it. On top of that, we discovered that one of the geniuses was just sending the magazines to her house. We used that as leverage to get her to talk. We had all the proof we need for corporate. This is almost done, I swear. So with that said, it's a Monday. The next week, Black Friday. I get pulled into the office again with the entire management team. The store manager tells me that corporates reviewed what I gathered, along with corporate loss prevention. The entire front-end staff is getting fired today. There was only one associate who wasn't involved with the scam, some new kid who started about 2 weeks ago. Everyone else, over 15 employees, was getting fired immediately in order to avoid lawsuits. The entire management team is aghast. Black Friday is 10 days away. The front-end management starts protesting until the store manager tells them that they're partially at fault for not paying attention. If our associates were that successful, they should have found out why and been using it to teach other stores. Instead, they sit all day in there eating and only come out when called. The store manager doesn't want to hear any protests from anyone. They're gonna call in all the front-end associates immediately and fire them. They will work doubles this weekend, 1 regular shift and 1 shift strictly for hiring. Oh, and instead of 10-hour shifts for everyone Black Friday, the entire store must work 16 hours, 8 in their department, 8 in the register. Anyone who refuses will be fired. It's dead silent in there. The store manager thanks me for my work and then asks me to stay late to help escort people out. I'm kind of stuck there anyways, so I might as well. Every cashier we have is then called in and fired. Word eventually gets out, and some of them don't come in until they're threatened with police involvement. There's tears, curses, one person being physically restrained, and another person getting cuffed. It wasn't pretty. The management is scrambling to hire people and train them with less than a week of training. Now, the front-end manager and I didn't get along to begin with. Long story short, but basically, she was lazy and terrible at her job. After all of this, I was public enemy number 1 in her book. It all came to a head the Tuesday before Black Friday. She comes up to me and she hands me a schedule. The schedule has me on register from 3 a.m. to 3 p.m. and then my previously scheduled loss prevention shift of 3 p.m. to midnight. I just laughed and I crumpled it up and threw it out. She then goes on a tear, like I'm talking full-blown tantrum in front of customers. I'm then called into the store manager's office again, and she's ranting, screaming how I'm not a team player and I should be fired on the spot for refusing. That's when I say, hey, loss prevention isn't allowed to handle money except for investigations. It would be against corporate regulations for me to work as a cashier, and we don't want to upset corporates at this critical time, would we? Insert the world's biggest grin. I've never seen someone look like they would blow out a vein in anger, but this woman was 3 steps away from becoming the Red Hulk. Needless to say, Black Friday was the biggest fiasco you'd ever seen. There were so many untrained employees on registers making mistakes. Old employees were leaving after their shift in their department and skipping the shifts on the registers. The lines were circling the store, and it was taking an hour plus to get to the cashiers. And as you can imagine, with lines that long, people were on edge. I think there were a total of 10 cops at the store that day, and they made over a dozen arrests. Meanwhile, management was running around like the sky was falling. It was glorious to watch in a way. Some people just want to watch the world burn, I guess, especially when those men make minimum wage. What a tale that was, guys, and seriously, I can't even begin to imagine what a crap show it was in the store that day. That said though, like those incentive systems always seem to fail in the end, don't they? And on top of that, like, I don't know about you guys, but I hate being sold stuff when all I'm trying to do is get my groceries and go home. Like, I'm referring to those credit card people in the stores nowadays. Like, people just want to do their shopping, and literally some places are asking employees to stalk the shoppers through the aisles looking for credit card application signups. Like, give me a break. But yeah, again, glorious tale with a wild ending. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our /entitled people. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy, crazy stories. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's another Entitled People episode where Karens think they rule the world and no one else matters. Guys, go check it out if you haven't. And myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.